So, hey, everybody from Scottsdale Living. I'm here with one of my favorite people on earth, Pastor David Friend, who my wife's family introduced me to, and just an amazing person. So we're going to have a chat about you, about your podcast and business and wife and the family, and just let people learn a little bit more about what you're doing, because I think you're really an inspirational person. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Life is good. It's filled with a lot of opportunities, a lot
Absolutely.
of challenges.
Yeah.
But we just have to learn how to deal with all of it.
Yeah,
and then
100%.
Come on in, we win.
Yep, exactly. You just keep going, right?
That's
Head
it.
down and keep going.
Keep on keeping on.
So
right?
tell me about the one thing that I think is great. So you've written quite a few, I think 5 books so far, or 6?
Well, now I just finished my 7th.
Okay, wow,
Yeah, I've
great.
got 7. I've done that in about 7 years.
Wow,
So
you're
it keeps me
cranking them out,
busy.
right? Yeah.
Keeps me busy. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you get the inspiration for what you're writing about?
Well, for some 20 years, I pastored a church in Scottsdale.
Yep.
And then prior to that, I taught Bible studies and stuff, and did a lot of counseling for family counseling and people with
Sure.
troubled children and all that stuff. And all that stuff over the years, that's hundreds and hundreds and probably even thousands
Yeah.
of messages and teachings and
And
counseling
stories
sessions.
and
All that stuff was in me,
Right.
and I thought, why should I just let it go and someday I'll die and it'll just die with me?
Sure.
And so I thought, well, to leave a little bit of a legacy of what the Lord has taught me and what I've learned by working with people,
Sure.
just started writing.
That's
And
fantastic.
it's amazing how quickly they start coming out.
Yeah.
And so it's an exciting life.
So did you find it challenging, to start? Because you just start with a blank piece of paper, right?
Well, it's funny about writing a book. I'm talking to a guy right now. I'm kind of counseling a young man who wants to write a book. He wants to write a book. He's so excited about it.
Yeah.
He's never done it. And I always encourage people, if you got a desire, it's in your heart to write a book,
Right.
then you got to start. You'll
Sure.
never get going unless you start. You got the key to writing a book is getting words on a page or on your on your computer.
Sure.
However you want to do it. I prefer writing. I enjoy writing, and then I transfer it over to my laptop, and
Sure.
then from there it goes to editing and all that stuff. But if you got something on your heart, something burning in your heart, it might be your life story, it might be a success, maybe it's challenges you went through and how you
Sure.
handled them. You need to express it. Some people don't have enough for a whole book, but some have enough just for maybe a few pages even.
Yeah.
Just
and in
write
today's world, it
things
could be a
down.
blog, it could be anything,
Oh
right?
yeah, it could be journaling. A lot of
Yeah.
people, their life, their journal is a book.
Yeah,
I mean, it
yeah.
literally is a book that they could write. So
Sure.
yeah, I find it fascinating to do it. I find it exciting to be able to give them away. I have a rough time selling them. I have a tendency to buy them, and then I'm talking to somebody, and I just want to help them. And so we pass it on to them.
So you're
that-
giving away more books than you
I've
sell.
given away far more books than I sell. But I like it. I have sponsors who will say, hey, I talk about Vietnam a
Right.
lot, talk
Yeah.
about veterans and stuff a lot,
Sure.
because I was a veteran in Vietnam.
And thank you for your service. I'm an Army veteran myself, and I think you were in the Army as well, weren't you?
I was an Army
Yep,
guy.
yep.
Yeah. And during that time was there, I never dreamed I'd ever write about it, but my
Sure.
wife hounded me, says, you got to write about Vietnam. And so I went, okay. So we wrote one, and the next thing I know, I wrote another book.
Right, right.
And then I started meeting with veterans and stuff and finding out their challenges and stuff in life. And so it's just one thing leads to another,
Yeah.
and so getting a book down is getting started.
Sure.
And you can get started by just journaling and starting to have something to go on. You don't have to be, taught and go to classes and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that, but just get the words on a piece of paper. You can always hire somebody to help you edit the whole thing,
Sure.
clean it up, and have it make
Just
sense.
get the flow out there.
Just
it going.
get it going. Get what's in your heart, in your
Right.
mind, down on a piece of paper, and get it down there. And then I do it probably more than anything else to pass it down to my family.
Sure.
A couple of Christmases ago, we had our 6 grandchildren with us.
Congratulations.
And they were
That's
all in the
fantastic.
same room at the same time.
Right.
And I said, I'm not sure if you guys want these or not. And our grandchildren at the time were all late teenagers and early 20-year-olds.
Sure.
And so I said, well, I have a little something for them. And I gave each one of them a full set of all the books that I've written.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And some of them were excited. Others were like, oh, goodness, I didn't think about that. But it's kind of a story for life. And
Sure.
it's a legacy that you can pass on to people.
Yeah, it's amazing is what it is.
It's fun.
Absolutely amazing.
It's fun.
Yeah. So what a journey, right? So we go back to Vietnam. So thank you again for your service in Vietnam and writing about that. And you come out of the war, and where did you start then? You went into banking? Is that your first career?
Well, when I came home from Vietnam, I didn't really know for sure what I wanted to do, and my wife was working for a bank. And so I went to work for a loan collection agency.
Oh, wow.
I just thought, well, why not? I'll give that a try. And
Sure.
I grew up in South Phoenix, and so there was a loan company down there, and I knew the guy. So I started collecting, and I started repoing TV sets and stuff.
Oh
and
my
I
gosh,
thought,
wow.
I can't do this. I remember I went out to get a TV once. This great big guy was there. His kids were watching TV, and I all of a sudden thought, I've got to take this guy's TV so he's not making the payments. And he's twice my size.
Right,
you know?
yeah.
And so I said, just please move out of the way. I have to take your TV. And he starts laughing. I think he's going to kill me. I think he's going to grab me and choke me to death. But no, he's laughing. And I grabbed the TV and I took it out, put it in my car. I went to my office.
Right.
I felt so bad. I felt so wrong about this.
Sure.
I put it on my desk, walked to my boss and said, I quit.
Yeah.
And so I left that. I only did that for a couple of months.
Sure.
But then after that, my wife got me an appointment with her boss to be interviewed at a bank. And so I started working for a bank, and I did that for about 15 years.
Wow.
Started as a drive-in teller.
Right.
The Lord
And
blessed
just
it.
worked your way up the ladder.
At 15 years, I was it's just, good Lord bless me. At 15 years, I was the state director for retail banking.
Wow.
For a major bank. We had 163 branches in Arizona.
Wow, that's crazy.
And my job was to teach all the managers how to increase their market penetration.
Sure.
You know, and beat the competition. That was
absolutely.
the goal.
Absolutely.
Because that's what I enjoyed as a banker was I would be in one bank and across the street be another guy.
Yep.
I'd want to find out what his deposits were,
Yeah.
what his loans were.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to beat him in
You
both
wanted
areas.
that to be my customers,
I wanted all that business. You
Right,
know.
yeah, 100%.
I really enjoyed banking. It was a great career. So I did that for about 15, almost 16
So
years.
you're still a young man at that point, and you go down a whole different path, right? And then you go into home building, is that right?
Yeah, I was only 35 at the time when I was the state director for the retail banking, and that's kind of young to have that position. But I've kind of thought that this is good, but I'd kind of like to have my own business as a banker. I was watching what other people were doing.
Sure.
And I thought, do I want to do this
Great,
the rest of
great
my life?
ground to learn, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I encourage young people, if you don't have a job, you don't know what you want to do, you don't want to get into, go work for a bank.
Sure.
Be a teller for 2 or 3 years. I don't know what they call them tellers anymore, but
Sure.
the people at the window,
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And, help these people. You meet literally hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of people.
Sure.
And you look at many, many types of businesses, and you'll learn from those. You'll say, now that looks good. Oh, I don't like that.
Right.
And you find that stuff that you like. Well, that's what I did. So as a manager, I started going after real estate developers.
Sure.
Because I really liked the home building business. I thought that was a great job, something good to do. I did a lot of mortgage loans, financed a lot of houses.
Sure.
So I got connected with those all the builders and developers who were buying big tracts of land and all that stuff, and learned from them. And through that experience, decided that's what I want to do.
Right.
So after about 15 to 16 years working for the bank, financing a lot of builders and stuff, and then being the state bank director for retail, I thought I'm going to have a home building business. So I told my wife, let's give it a shot. She said, let's go for it. I don't want you to be an little old man one day looking at me and saying, you always wanted to have your own business, but you never did it.
Right.
And so we basically refinanced our house, took a big chunk of cash out of it.
Sure. Risky move, right?
And it was a
little
very
scary.
risky move. I had no income, no project, no clients, nothing.
Right.
But I went into building. For a couple years before being a home builder, one of my customers offered me a really great opportunity, and I went into commercial development where we build office buildings and small shopping centers and things like that for about 3 years.
Kind of get your feet wet, learn it a little bit.
I didn't care for it because it was just so. I don't know. Housing is where someone's going to live.
Yeah.
You're building something that's special to them.
Commercial's a little non-emotional, cut and dry kind of thing.
It was,
right? Yeah.
and it was up and down. You would make a lot of money on one project and lose a lot of money on the next project, and I didn't care for that.
Right.
I liked the steady, consistent that you're going to get a home. If you can't sell it, you can rent it.
Right.
But someone's going to live in it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
One way or another. So went into that, and when I did that, my goodness, had a real estate development company for almost 20 years.
Yeah. And you were building homes, right?
Oh,
that
we built homes all over the valley,
Right.
mainly in golf course, guard-gated communities that were golf courses.
Okay.
I found that there was a certain group of people that liked my product there.
Sure.
I built it pretty much every major golf course development in the valley, and a lot of non-golf course places. And then,
Sure.
But I'd go out and buy a piece of land, and I'd subdivide it. I'd have a 20-acre parcel. I'd go get 40 half-acre lots.
Totally.
And fight with the city or the
municipality, whoever you had to fight with.
deal
Yeah,
with.
exactly.
Get my zoning,
Right.
and then sell a couple lots to get it going. Then put up a couple houses there
Sure.
to kind of prime the pump.
Yep.
And show
Yep.
the builders and developers that's what you need to build. And
Right.
so then my houses would sell, and then boom, I would be snowed down with home builders who wanted my lots.
Right.
And
right.
so then we sell the lots off, and that was a really good business. We did that, and did a lot of houses, and it was a really really was a good business. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Still enjoy flipping houses. Still enjoy
Sure.
buying and selling properties.
Are you still doing that?
Well, my wife's a realtor.
Right.
She's had a license for probably 30 years.
Oh my gosh! Wow, I love
But
that.
she only represents us.
Right. Sure.
She's just one of those gals that just prefers just to do our stuff.
Yeah, of course.
So if we want to go do a house, she finds it, we buy it,
Right.
we sell, put it all. I do the work and get it ready. Then she flips it, she sells it.
Sure.
And then she doesn't like to do a lot of those because
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
a painter. She's loves to spend her time
Sure.
in painting at home.
Sharon's an amazing woman, by the way. Fantastic. She's absolutely amazing.
She's had her artwork in galleries around the state,
Right.
And so sold a lot of paintings. And she doesn't like to paint to sell. She likes to paint for a reason or purpose. And a lot of times people come to our house and they'll see all of her art hanging, and they'll just fall in love with one of her
Yeah.
pieces of art. She'll say, "You love that? Would you put that in your house?" And they say, "Oh, I'd love to have my home."
Sure.
She say, "Well, then here, it's yours."
Oh, that's
Take it right
amazing,
off the wall
right.
and hand it to them.
Right.
It's probably a $600 to $800
Yeah,
gallery
yeah.
piece, maybe $1,000 piece.
Right.
But she just wants to bless them with that.
I love that.
And then she says, "I got a blank spot, and I got
Sure.
to do another painting."
Sure. So, I mean, a little side topic. So, you guys have been married a long time, and I know you've counseled a lot of couples
Oh, yes.
on the marriage. So, just what's a couple tips, tricks? How do you maintain it? I mean, because that's a challenging thing in today's world, right? I mean, it's not as
It's very
commonplace.
challenging. Yeah, and it doesn't matter if people are church people or non-church people. The divorce rate is about the same.
Sure,
It's
okay.
right about 50% of marriages, and so well, I can remember as a kid. I go all the way back when I was 10 years old. My mom and dad set us down in the kitchen. We were from the typical family back in the 50s, in
absolutely.
the early 60s, and you ate dinner together. There were
Yep.
6 in the family. We all
Yep.
sat and had dinner together.
And you ate at home,
and
yeah,
that was
absolutely.
your time, and you better be home for dinner. That's all
Right.
there was to it. And so we'd be sitting around the table before we ate. My mom said, "Your grandmother's getting divorced again. This is her 4th divorce."
Oh my gosh.
This is my grandmother. Now
And that was rare in the
that
60s and
was
50s,
Very
right?
rare,
Yeah.
yeah. She says, "I want to tell you that stops with her.
Yeah.
We will not have divorce. We will not have any divorce in the rest of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
All your dad and I and whatever." Well, mom and dad Dad lived to be 80. They were married 60 years. Mom lived to be 95.
60 years, my gosh.
They put 60 years in.
Right.
Today, my wife and I have been married 56. My sister's
That's
been married
amazing.
57. My
Wow.
brother's been married 57, and my sister's been married 58.
So something happened there at that table.
There hasn't been a single divorce since that time when Mom said, "We're
absolutely
done
amazing.
with this.
Right.
Let's make this thing work." And
Sure.
it's kind of set the family on a goal that we can work things out.
Yep.
I tell you, the number of people that I have counseled, John, that had a divorce would look at me and say, "I didn't really need to have that."
Yeah.
Looking back on it, I think
Gave up maybe, or
yeah, I think we could have made it work.
Sure.
And not all marriages do work. I realize that not some people shouldn't be married. They probably should have never married.
Right,
But
yeah.
the bottom line of it is, a lot of times it can be worked out. And I thank the good Lord that I have done. I mean, I can't imagine how many hundreds and hundreds, maybe a few thousand. Counseling individuals,
Sure.
and many of those had 6, 7, 8 sessions that we went through.
Yeah.
And we probably had 90% of those people that were looking at divorce didn't have to.
Oh,
Once they
yeah.
sat down, you take them back to what brought them together.
Right.
What was that good feeling you had inside, and you just couldn't
Absolutely,
be away
yeah.
from that person.
The
You wanted to
honeymoon-
be-
the
you wanted
honeymoon
to be
part.
with that person.
Yeah.
Let's go back and reclaim that. Let's find out what took us away from that.
Sure.
And then, of course, I believe in the scriptures, and I believe
Absolutely,
what the Bible
yeah.
has to say about teaching us and helping us and give us and teach us how a man ought to love his wife like Christ loved the church.
Sure.
That he'd love her so much that he'd give his life for her.
Mm-hmm.
And that women should love their husbands and they should respect their husbands. And it's wonderful teaching the Apostle Paul taught.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that would help people. So I enjoyed that part
Absolutely.
of pastoring. And matter of fact, I still do it, even though I'm.
I gotta imagine, because I mean, you were a pastor for so long and impacted
Yeah.
so many people. You still must get those phone calls.
Oh.
I mean, I know I've called you and said, "Pastor friend, we need to chat. I need some help here." So
Yeah.
I'm sure that still comes in.
I really like it.
Yeah.
I never ever. I used to be at the church and I'd be preaching. There'd be 800-900 people in a service, and I would say, I want to get together. I tell you how bad I want to meet with you. Here's my phone number. Here's my cell phone. Call me.
Right.
Now I know a lot of pastors say you gave your cell phone out to
Yeah.
everyone in the church. And I thought, well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I found out if I gave my phone number to people, they would catch me at the door going out of church, and they'd
Sure.
say, we need to call you. I'd say, great, I'd love to meet with you. But I found out that very few ever called.
Right. Yeah.
They were respectful of your time or whatever. They didn't bother you to death. The serious ones did.
Sure.
The ones that really, really needed help. So
Yeah.
we taught marriage classes at our church. We did what we call marriage boot camps, where we would go. My wife and I would explain what works and what doesn't work.
Sure. Sure.
All those kinds of things. But marriage is a wonderful institution. It's under attack right now.
It
terribly
is a
under
little bit.
attack.
I know. It's
But
scary.
you know, a lot of the younger people, I'm finding that these 20-year-olds, 22s, and out of college, they're starting to think again that marriage is a pretty cool thing, and they're starting to realize that it's a wonderful institution and something that this country has operated on and the world has operated on.
For thousands of years, absolutely.
We should get back and set up a marriage, but then when you marry, it should be for the rest of your life.
Sure.
It
Yeah.
may not always be, but that would be the goal, and that's how you look at it.
Yep.
You just can't think there's not going to be anything that's going to change this. We'll have our ups and downs, but
Right.
we're just going to make sure that things work out.
Yeah, we're going to get through it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So take us. We ended up with you being a successful home builder.
Right.
You've got your own company. And I
Right.
think it's David Friend Homes. Is that what it
It
was?
was called Dave Friend Homes.
Homes. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember buying the signs at Scottsdale Country Club, and at one time on the corner of Hayden and Cactus, that's Scottsdale Country Club.
Yeah.
There's the East 9 and there's the other 9, West 9. And I had the East 9, and I got the sign rights, and I made a contract with the Japanese people that owned the land, and I started buying lots from them, and they said, look, you're going to be the only home builder in here.
Wow.
There's about 70 lots yet to go.
Right.
And I said, well, I'd like to buy all 70 of them. I can't do it right now, but let's work out a deal.
Sure.
And they said, let's do it. And so I put my name up there on 2 big signs, huge signs, Dave Friend Homes. And people would call me and say, boy, you must be doing great. They didn't realize I was just basically doing deals and partnerships with people.
Yeah, totally.
And putting houses in. But it's funny, when you find your market, you find the right product.
Sure.
I was turning out, this will age me and date me a little bit, but I was turning out 3,000 square foot homes on the golf course with a swimming pool. I could build them in 90 work days.
Wow, that's
90
crazy.
There were no delays. There
Right.
were no material was abundant. Workers were abundant.
Sure.
And I could get from scratch, go all the way through them, have them done. And we were selling them for about $385,000.
Can we back that up? Can we go? Yeah. So that same house today is probably running a couple $1 million.
Yeah,
right?
they're pricey. I was building in Paradise Valley Country
Sure.
Club, and I was building all over Paradise Valley and in
Right.
Desert Mountain. I'm one of the first builders at Desert Mountain, and build a house, and then nobody would ever go out there.
Yeah.
It's one thing to build.
That's a little bit of a risky move at the time because there was probably nothing between
nothing
here and
out
there.
There was nothing out there, and we would be willing to take a risk if a developer wanted us to help him get some building going.
Sure.
We'd work a deal out where I wasn't going to get hurt real
Right,
bad,
right.
and I'd still have to take the risk and put the house in. But yeah, we built in pretty much all the golf courses. I remember doing Oncala Country Club.
Yeah,
when it was brand new.
Yeah.
And people said, "Oh, no one's going to buy out there. No one's going to ever buy."
I know,
out
now it's
Oncala."
right in the middle,
Oh,
right?
right, it's now in the middle of town. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember realtors saying, "Well, no one's going to be there. As soon as they see those power lines and they have to drive past those," I said, "Those power lines are 2 miles away from where the project is."
Yeah.
But when you're sitting on Kala, you look down in the valley
It's
area.
amazing views. Yeah, amazing
It
views.
is gorgeous.
Yep.
And I was building on the golf course out
Right.
there. Very narrow golf course, by the way.
Yeah.
One that's
Oh, no, I played on college. Absolutely.
They're very narrow
Yep,
fairways.
it's a little tight.
It's tight.
Yeah.
And, but that was a good experience. Matter of fact, that's the last place that I was building homes before I took my next step in life.
Well, then you get a calling, right? You get the calling from the Lord and off to the next episode.
It's really interesting how things can change. I was set up to take out the last 70 lots at Scottsdale Country Club. The deal was done, ready to go,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, the owners of the land said, "I don't think we're going to do the deal after all. We just don't want to do it." And I said,
wow.
"Oh, we have a done deal. I've got my financing in place. Everything's
Right.
ready to go. I'll buy all the lots from you at once. I've got it all financed to carry it out." I was selling those things like crazy.
Sure.
And they just said, "No, we don't want to do it."
Wow.
And so they just pulled the rug out from me. So I told my wife, I said, "When in doubt, go to the beach."
Right.
So we.
That's a good thing to live by. I love that.
So she loved the beach. She grew up in Florida. And so we got in our car and we drove over and rented a place on the beach in Solana Beach. And just decided, we had some people we knew there, and we would rent one of their units. There was a lot of people that would rent their units for the summer.
Sure.
We could pretty much get a week here or there. You can't anymore. They're
Right.
so
Yeah,
hard
it's
to get.
crazy. Right? Get
But
out of
we
the
could
heat
get
though.
one. So we go over there, and we set this one time. Went out there on the beach, and I'm reading a book. I tell you, anybody that's listening in, you might want to think about this. You might be looking at an issue in your life you're trying to deal with or trying to be challenged with. I suggest you meditate a little bit. You get alone. If you're married, get alone with your spouse. Get a little quiet time. Get the hustle and bustle around, and start reading something. Find something that's interesting. So I like to read books about Christian businessmen who decided that they were going to give away as much as they possibly could to the work of the Lord, to their church, and to bless people and help hungry people and homeless people and all that. And I ran across the book written where a man was giving 10% of his income to the work of the Lord, his gross income, and his goal was to give 90% and live on 10.
Right.
And so he did.
Amazing.
But he made so much money. He was making so many millions and millions of dollars a year that his 10% was more than he ever made before he started giving.
Sure.
And so
That's
crazy. If you give, it'll come back pressed together, running over. You'll be blessed with it. So that's what he did. So I thought that story was fabulous. I just loved it because I always taught in your finances, if you want to be blessed, give 10% to the work of the Lord at your church. Save 10% for yourself and try to live on 80% of what you make. Adjust your budget so you can live on the 80. Then if you really want to be risky, give 20% away to other people and save 20% for yourself and live on 60%.
Sure. Yeah.
And from the time we did that, our income just kept going up and up and up and up until we're...
So it came back to you tenfold.
It always did. It always did, and so we found ourselves being blessed financially. So we're sitting on the beach over there reading, and I finished this book, and I looked at my wife and I said, I don't want to have to go up all those steps because some of those condos. Oh, you got 200 steps. I think you have to go upstairs to go back to your condo. And I said, you got something you brought down? She said, yeah, I've got this little book. She said about a preacher. I said, oh, that'd be good. And she handed to me this little paperback about 120 pages or so.
Sure.
And is the life of a guy named Smith Wigglesworth. Interesting
fantastic.
name. Yeah, he's an American guy. He traveled all over the world. He was a great evangelist. He was a plumber.
Okay.
And at 48 years of age, he was a plumber. His wife said, I don't know why you're a plumber. You should be preaching. You should be an evangelist. You should be praying for sick people and helping people. And he said, well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. And so he started at 48. Well, I was 48.
Oh, wow.
When I was reading that book.
Right.
So that caught my attention.
Yeah.
And I read his book, and he said, Lord, if you'll help me, give me another 40 years of life. Back in the day that he was doing this was in the late 1800s.
Oh, wow, okay.
He died in 1946, which was the year that I was born. That also made a connection.
Wow.
You know,
so this book's resonating.
Yeah,
this is hitting home.
This thing's hitting home.
Yeah.
And I read about his life, and he went into ministry, and he lived to be 88 years of age before he passed. And so, which was interesting at that time. A man wasn't expected to live that long.
Sure, yeah.
But anyway, Smith Wigglesworth wrote this amazing story about faith, about how to have faith. And so it really hit me. I mean, I read that book in like about an hour and a half. I just buzzed right through this little tiny thing and I gave it back. And we went upstairs and showered and got cleaned up to go to have dinner. And we're sitting at dinner on the beach. We really always love to sit find a restaurant that had a place on the beach.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
If you're going to go there and look at it, So anyways, in the middle of it, I looked at my wife and I says, I really think I feel called into ministry and that we should close our business up and start all over again.
So she looked at you and said?
She looked at me and she had tears in her eyes. And I said, oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. We don't have to do it right now. I mean, we can wait. This doesn't have to happen tomorrow. She said, no, the reason that I'm tearing up, she said, I'm not sad. I'm just the opposite. She said, when I was a little girl, this is a great story, how a wife should handle something. She said, when I was a little girl, about 8 years old, I went to a little Baptist church, and there was a preacher there, and he preached and said, give your life to Jesus. And so I ran up to the front, and I said, yeah, I want Jesus in my life. But I looked at this preacher, and I said, Lord, I want to marry a preacher guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, at 8 years old.
At 8.
Right.
She thought, I'm going to get married to a preacher. Like, this guy's a preacher.
Right.
And so then she winds up with me, and first I was in the Army.
Yeah.
Then I was a banker.
Right.
Then I was a real estate developer. And then finally, at the age of 48,
right.
I'm telling her, I think it's time for us to sell our business, to get out of the business right now and just go into full-time ministry. And I said, why didn't you say something sooner? And she said, that would have been the worst thing I could have done to you.
Sure.
Was put you on a guilt trip that, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? You're supposed to be a preacher.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but then when she told me, we'd been married for 28 years, when she told me for the first time that she knew she was supposed to be married to a
That's a
preacher.
long play on her part.
That is a long play, and she's just so loving and so forgiving, and she just was just wonderful about that. So I said, well, if you're interested, we'll do it. She said, let's do it.
Yep.
And so I went back and talked to my dear friend Pastor Tommy Barnett at the Phoenix campus,
Yep.
bigger campus than ours currently, and he was my pastor at the time, and I said, I want to go into ministry, and then he looked at me and he says, well, it's about time.
Oh, wow.
And here I'm going, everybody else in the world is thinking
Right.
that I should be in ministry except me. You
Right,
know?
that's crazy.
Isn't it
That's
crazy?
amazing, yeah.
So that's what happened, and I went ahead and told him, I said, I'd like to start, and I can work for free if you'd like. And he said, fine, you can when can you report? I said, well, Monday's good. He said, fine, be there Monday. So I started working for nothing at the church.
That's amazing.
I had a funny story. I went over there to work, and they didn't have any place to put me. And there was
Right.
this little room, just a little boxy room. Is maybe a 6 by 6, maybe 5 by 5, tiny little closet. What
Sure.
it was, but it was just big enough for a little desk and a chair.
Uh-huh.
And as long as you don't open and close the door.
Yeah, there
You know, and so I went in
So
there
this
and
is your
said,
space,
this
right?
is my spot.
Yep.
So the doors close, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there one day, and this bag of trash flies in and lands on top of me.
Oh, wow.
A little gal's in there, and I went, someone's in here.
Yeah.
And she went, oh no. She said, that's the garbage room. That's the trash room. We always take our bags of trash after we collect it after the services.
Right.
Put these bags, and we throw it in there until the weekend, until Monday comes around, and we take it out of here.
Sure.
Poor thing, she's so embarrassed
Yeah,
and whatever.
no,
And
right.
I'm laughing. I'm thinking, well, I got to start all over again.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So that's where I started, and then after about 3 years, I told Pastor Barnett that I really was called to pastor our own church
Sure.
someplace.
Yeah.
And
And
he's-
that's North Scottsdale Christian
And
at
that's
the time.
North
right?
Scottsdale
Yeah.
Christian, yeah. And there was no church in Scottsdale that we had part of our group, and so I went ahead and told him that, and he said, "Well, let me see what happens." And so we were praying and said, "Well, if the Lord's got something for me, then it'll come through Tommy Barnett.
Yep.
I'm not going to go out on my own, beat down doors. I just
Sure.
want to do what the Lord wants me to do." So, anyways, we prayed about it, and then one day he said, "Come here, I need to talk to you." Went in the office. He says, "I got your church."
Wow.
Now, when he said "got your church," I said I'd go anywhere.
Right.
If I was supposed to move to Texas and go to Texas, or wherever I was supposed to go, it didn't
Sure.
matter. If I was supposed to go to Eloy, Arizona,
Yep.
wherever
We're
that
there.
opened, I'm supposed to be there.
Right.
And the last place I would have thought would have been my first place that I
Yeah.
wanted to go, which was Scottsdale, Arizona.
Sure. That's
Because
crazy.
I had built
Amazing.
here, I developed here. I also taught school for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
While I was working at the bank, I was in the evenings. I was teaching at the community college.
I remember
level,
that, yeah,
banking,
absolutely.
finance classes. I did
Right.
that for 5 or 6 years, and I taught at Scottsdale Community College and
Sure.
taught there, and Phoenix College and various places. But it was the last place I thought. So people out there who are saying, well, what should I do about this, or what should I do about? Well, get alone once again.
Yeah.
Get alone with the Lord. Get alone with someone that you love, that you enjoy being around. Get quiet, or maybe read something that inspires you a little bit for hope and future, and and believe that God's got a great plan for you, because the Bible tells us that God created us with a plan and a purpose for our life.
Sure.
And I'm telling you, whether you're a Christian or not, God has a purpose for your life. He has a plan for your life, and all of us have a purpose. We have a purpose, and I feel like I found my real purpose in life later on in my life.
Sure.
After I had been a banker and after I had been a real estate developer, although those were good, and I thought I'd be in all of those, quite frankly, the rest of my life.
Sure.
I thought I would
Sure.
retire out of them. But there was something better and something, that was in store. So we started the church, and then Tommy says, I got your church for you. And when Pastor said that to me, I thought, wow, I wonder what it is. He said, I've got a man donating money if we start a church in Scottsdale. And I told him, you're the pastor.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so a man in Scottsdale here and I met, and we just liked each other immediately. And
Sure.
so he donated some of the money to get started. And we started the church. We started meeting in little hotel rooms, little conference rooms.
Sure.
Of
Wow.
like the Hampton Inn and
Right.
the Holiday Inn. So if you don't have a place to meet.
So that's how you built the congregation up, was
Yeah,
from that?
honestly, it was just little rooms that you couldn't get more than 30 people in a room.
Right, right.
And they would set up chairs for us. We would pay $100 a month. I mean, an hour.
Sure.
$100 for an hour. And that's all we could have, is an hour, maybe 2 hours to have a service. And all of a sudden it went from 30 to 60 to 90 to 100 and 120 people. We were renting multiple rooms. We rented a big building in the air
Right.
park. So here comes the big risk. We had a small congregation, about 100 people that were consistent.
Sure.
But I really felt that I needed to build a 20,000 square foot facility that would seat 500 people in an auditorium.
Yeah. So that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, right?
And there wasn't anybody going to guarantee it. There wasn't
Right.
anybody handing out money. That guy that gave us some money said, he didn't give me the money all at once. He
Right,
just said,
yeah.
well, I'll give it to you as we go along, which was fine. He
Yeah.
did eventually give it all.
Sure.
But what's interesting is we went out to the air park, and I met a man there, and I said, I got a small church. I was a real estate developer. I was a banker for
Sure.
years. And we kind
So
of
you know the business.
we kind of hit it off, and
Sure.
he says, well, I got an empty 22,000 square foot building in the air park. He says, I haven't rented it yet. And I said, well, I'd like to rent it.
Sure.
So I signed a lease with him, 5,000 for, what was it, 20,000 square feet for $20,000 a month for 5 years.
Wow.
And I signed
That's a
the
leap of
lease.
faith right there.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I had a church that was running about 100 people, and it probably, income was probably, I don't know, $3,000 a month.
Oh, wow.
$4,000 a
Yeah.
month, maybe.
Right,
Maybe not quite
right.
that much. And we'd done that for about 6, 7, 8 months.
Uh-huh.
And then all of a sudden, he had to finish the building.
Sure.
I went to 7 buildings before someone said, yes, if you're a church, I'll let you come here.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
in the air park, where there were lots of churches.
Right.
You
Right.
know, but I went from landlord after landlord to building after building, and they kept saying, no, we don't want a church in here. We don't want a church in here. We just want somebody that's going to be here throughout the week.
Sure.
Well, church was even a better usage because we, quite frankly, would only there twice a week.
Yeah, right.
Sundays, and then in the middle of the week we'd have a service, and that was pretty much it.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, so he said, I'm going to take a chance on you. I'm ready. Let's go. So we signed the lease, and our first week we moved in. We didn't do any big promotion. We had 250 people.
Wow.
And the second week, we got to get a little information in the newspaper and said we're starting a church, whatever. We had 405 in the second week.
Amazing.
Third
That's
week
incredible.
we were over 500, and
Wow.
within a year to a year and a half, running 1,000.
That's amazing.
And in 3 years we were running 2,000
wow.
out of that building because
Right.
we had this big building now. We had 500 seat auditorium.
Yeah, yeah.
I had multiple services on Sunday. I'd have 3
Sure.
services on Sunday and 1 or 2 during the week.
And are you the only pastor at this time?
At the time, I was it.
Okay.
I was
wow.
the only guy.
So you're working a lot.
Yeah.
yeah.
At the time, we were running about 600 to 800 people, and I didn't get any other pastors until we probably went over 800 people.
Okay, sure.
Before I got someone else to help, except for a worship leader, because I wasn't going to lead the singing.
Yeah,
and do
yeah,
the
absolutely,
preaching.
right.
So I had a wonderful guy who was a great worship leader, and he came on staff. But we only had like 4 employees, 5
Wow,
employees.
that's crazy.
And the church got up to over 1,000, and we finally got, when we had 2,000 people, we had like 15 employees
Right.
to try and handle that.
Sure.
And but I knew then that we were supposed to have a permanent building somewhere,
Mhm.
and so went out looking for land. It's interesting. There are things that happen in your life that you get to use later on in life. You learn something when you're 20
Sure.
that you may not use until you're 40.
Right. Right.
And so all those years of real estate development, buying and selling land, do land syndications, subdivisions, and all
Sure.
the stuff that I was doing, building houses, and
So all the knowledge came back
all
really
of a sudden
important.
this is
yeah.
here, and I thought, well, I can use this to help the church.
Right.
And I wasn't making any money. My wife was a realtor, but she wasn't going to make any commissions. She'd
Sure.
find the deal, but we would donate her commissions to the church.
Sure.
Every deal we ever did with her, the church got 100% of whatever she made.
Sure.
And that made it better for the church. So we did things that were kind of fun. We bought a lot in the air park, and we were going to expand to it, and thought, I told a guy we'd like to buy the lot and expand to it. And then I said, well, look, maybe we should just sell it. So this man that had put us in the building, he wanted that lot.
Right.
He was trying to buy it for years, and he says, the guy won't sell it. And I said, yeah, he will. He just hasn't met the right person.
Sure.
So I met him.
Right.
This is fun for anybody in real estate wondering how to buy something. I didn't have any money at the time.
Right.
The church was doing well. The money was coming in, but I didn't have an extra $800,000 sitting around.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
You could just go out and buy a piece of dirt.
Right.
I had rent, $22,000 a month in
Yeah.
rent that we had to pay, and other carrying costs, and then my utilities and stuff, and insurance and staff.
Oh,
and
yeah,
all that.
yeah.
It was expensive to run the church. So I went and talked to the guy. We prayed about it, and I said, I pray that we get favor.
Right.
So if somebody out there is trying to get something to go through, ask God to give you favor in your next meeting that you have. I said, let him have favor with me so that I could buy it from him. And I said, I'd like to buy your lot next door. He says, it's not for sale. And I said, well, but I want to buy it. He
Yeah.
says, but it's not for sale. I said, well, would you at least meet me at the lot so we could talk?
Sure.
And everybody said, well, he'll just hang up on you. He said, yeah, let's meet.
Wow.
So the next day we met.
Mhm.
I met him there, and I said, what do you want for the lot? He said, it's not for sale. I said, but if it was for sale, what would you want for the lot? He said, well, I want $750,000 for it.
Mhm.
It's a 1 acre lot. I said, sold.
Wow.
And I said, I'll give you $10,000 down and the
Right.
balance in 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, fine.
Yeah. But now you had to come up with
I
$740,000.
was short 740 grand. And I thought, well, that's no big deal. I've had that before.
Yeah.
So then I called the guy that wanted to buy the lot.
Yeah.
And I says, hey, John, and his name was John.
Right.
I said, John, would you like to buy that lot next door? Oh, I'd love to, but it's not for sale. And I said, yeah, it is. I said, I own it. And he said,
That's great.
And he said, no, what do you mean you own it? And I said, well, it's an escrow.
Yeah.
And I says, and I'll double escrow with you. And so if you'd like, you give me $850,000 for it. We'll
Sure.
take $750, pay the lot off, and I make $100 for the church.
Right.
He said, really? I said, yeah. And so I still, I didn't have the money, so it had to
Sure.
hit right, and it did. The
Yeah.
Lord blessed it, and we wound up making that money. Well, they made that $100,000,
Mm-hmm.
and so now we had a little extra cash to work with. And I said, now we got to go buy a permanent piece of land
Sure.
for our building, and we found the land that we're on out there on Pima Road,
Yep.
north of Dynamite.
And
it
that was probably a stretch at the time too, right?
Oh, it
'Cause
was a
there
big
couldn't
stretch.
have been
It
much
was
up there.
33 acres. There wasn't
Yeah.
anybody out there.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
nobody out there.
Right.
And still pretty sparse because the
Mhm.
zoning's 1 house to 5
Yep.
acres.
Yep.
And so I bought the piece of dirt, and I found a piece of dirt for 33 acres, and I called the guy on the phone. I'm on my phone in the car, and I'm talking. He says, "You have a car phone?" I said, "Yeah, but it's a cheap one." and I thought, "Oh crap! I shouldn't have called him from the car."
Yeah.
Back in those days, not everybody had phones.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
This,
Sure.
this goes back to about 2001.
Okay.
Our church was
Sure.
about 3 years old,
Mhm.
and we got to buy a piece of land.
Right.
And so he says, I need $1,250,000 for 33 acres.
Wow.
The market was flat, dead. Nobody would do
Yeah.
anything. I said, I'll tell you what. I'll give you $10,000 down in 30 days. I'll give you the balance.
We played this game before, right?
He said, done.
Yeah.
So he
Amazing.
signed a contract, and I gave him his 10 grand.
Right.
And now we need to raise the rest of it.
Sure.
And so I called the guy that committed money, and I
Right.
said, I got a piece of land, and could you help me with it?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'll pay for half of it.
Wow. That's
He
amazing.
gave me $600,000
Right.
for the
Right.
church.
Yeah.
And so I got half of it. Now I got to find the other half.
Sure.
So I called a friend of mine who was a successful guy in business in real estate, and I said, would you loan me $650,000 and get a first position on $1,250,000 piece of dirt?
Sure.
I'll pay a 10% interest. I'll give you quarterly payments of $125,000 a quarter
Right.
until it's paid off. And he said, oh, yeah, I'll do that.
Wow.
So I had my money
Right.
within 30 days. So we bought it.
Right.
Well, now I'm sitting there going, I got $125,000 payments every 90
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
That's a little tight.
Yeah.
Although we were making a lot of money, the income was doing really, really well, but I didn't have that kind of room.
Sure.
What's that? $500,000
Yeah. Yeah.
a year.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then I prayed. I said, Lord, I really need some help. And I really felt in my sense, I never heard God speak to me, never heard an audible voice. But you know how you get impressed, call that person, or
Mhm.
what you need to do is this or do that. And that kind of thought hit me. Walk around the neighborhood and tell the neighbors who you are, you want to be a good neighbor, and that what you're going to build there.
Sure.
And if they'd like to buy some land.
Wow.
'Cause
So you're going to start.
You got more land than you need.
Right.
You only wanted 20 acres, and you
Mhm.
had 33. So I went down the street, and there was a lady there. She was on an 8-acre parcel.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, and she says, well, I don't like you having a church next to me like that, a big church like that. I said, well, we're pretty far from you. How would you like to keep us farther from you? And buy land between us?
Sure.
And she said, that'd be good. I said, no. She said, I'm trying to sell, but I don't want to. I have to sell all 8 acres, and I don't want to. I want to keep 3, and it's zoned 1 house to
Yeah.
5. So you got to keep everything in 5-acre
Yeah.
parcels. I said, why don't you do this? Why don't you buy 7 acres from me?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and now you'll have 15.
Sure.
And I said, you can
And
mark
sell
off
off
your
two,
5
yeah.
and then sell 2 5-acre parcels.
Mhm.
She said, what do you want for it? I said, $650,000.
Wow.
That's what I borrowed.
Right.
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 I was going to get half what I paid for the 33 acres. I was going to get half of it with 7 acres.
That's amazing.
I said, and you're going to sell those 5-acre parcels for probably $550, $650 a parcel.
Sure.
You get at least $500,000 for them, and that's $1 million, for you to pay. Give me $650, and you'll get to stay where you are and have 5 acres. She
Right.
said, how did you know to do this? You're a pastor. And I said,
Yeah.
well, I have a little background.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So that's, totally prepared you for that time in your
See
life.
how things in our life prepares for something else.
Right.
So long story short, the good Lord blessed us, and we had only been a church for 2 years, and we owned the rest of the land was 26.3 acres. That's what's still there to this day.
Wow.
We own
Okay.
26.3 is what we wound up keeping.
Sure.
After we gave her piece to her, and it's been paid off. And it was paid off, and here we were, this church in the air park that now had a 26.3 acre
Right.
parcel of land paid for, and no taxes because it was a nonprofit church,
Sure.
and you don't take property taxes on that.
Right.
So we got this piece of land, and I'm out there driving by it all the time, going, Lord, I want to build on this thing. And
Yeah.
we did, and within 7 years of the church starting, we built a $12 million facility.
It was absolutely gorgeous. Still to this day, absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
And we've been so blessed, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's just something that I just give God all the credit. But I
Sure.
also thank the Lord for the experiences we have in life. The
Yeah,
experiences
absolutely.
we have in life can do something for us. They can
Yeah.
really help us, and they can bless us. You know?
Well, yeah, everything you learned going up to that point obviously served
Was
you
such a
well,
blessing.
served the church well.
Just
Yeah.
such a blessing, you know. And
Yeah.
so I just think that it's important we don't forget the fact that that what we've learned today, maybe as a little kid, something we learned. What's interesting, I go back as a little kid. I had a grandmother who was a real estate developer
Okay. Wow.
in Phoenix
Right.
in the 1930s.
A grandmother,
A grandmother.
which is highly unusual.
was-
Is this the 4 divorce grandmother?
She was the 4 divorced
Okay.
grandmother. And grandma would take me for rides around South Phoenix. And I was, it was in 1952, 53, 54, when I was a little kid. I mean, 6, 7, 8, 9 years
Sure.
old. But I love Grandma. Grandma owned 2 little restaurants down there. She owned a hotel. She was buying and selling property. She was buying land on Central Avenue.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so she said, I think this is going to be a pretty major street.
Yeah.
So
She hit that one right,
yeah,
huh?
and she was buying stuff and flipping stuff, and by this time she was single again before she married again. She was worth a lot of money, but every time she married a guy, he'd clean her out.
Oh, wow.
She
yeah.
came from the old school that when you get married, no prenup, no nothing
Yeah,
else,
yeah.
just put it all at risk, and these guys would clean her out. So then she'd
Yeah.
get rid of them, and she'd start all over again.
Sure.
And she'd be doing her business deals again, and she'd
Yep, yep.
build it up. And the last guy that married her, he cleaned her out again. By this time, she was getting pretty old. And
Yeah.
wasn't able to do much. But Grandma would look at me and she'd say, "See that piece of land over there? What do you see?" And I'd say, "Well, Grandma, it's just dirt,
Right.
weeds, tumbleweeds."
A couple cactuses or something.
Yeah, and
yeah.
she'd say, "No. She says, "What you see on that? That's about 10 acres." She said, "Maybe 12." And I think, "How do you know that?" Anyway, she said, "Well, that's She said, "What you see there is a grocery store and a drugstore, and you see a shoe repair, and you see a ladies' hair salon and a barber shop."
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I would say,
She's a visionary. That's an amazing
and
woman.
she'd drive me down Central Avenue. If you've been down Phoenix, in Phoenix, and gone down Central Avenue on the northern end up around Bethany,
Uh-huh.
where the big houses were, that was kind
Yeah.
of the rich people lived.
Sure.
We would drive out there, and I'd be driving down the street, and she'd say, "What do you think of these big houses?" I said, "Grandma, they're really nice." you
Sure.
know? And she said, "Would you like to own one someday?" "Oh, I don't know if I could ever be able to do that." She said, "I don't want to hear that from you."
Yeah.
Grandma would say, I don't want to hear that from you."
Sure.
And I'd say, see, if you're a grandparent, when you talk to your kids, your grandkids, and you're a parent and you talk to your kids,
Yeah.
remember the things you say, they're recording.
Oh, yeah.
It's in
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah.
They'll turn it back on you someday.
Sure.
But Grandma she said, no. She says, buy 3 of them and live in one, and then rent the other 2 to other people, and let those 2 people pay for all 3 of them.
Right.
And she would throw that at me, and here I'm like 8,
Yeah,
9
yeah.
years old, but
Yeah.
it's stuck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's stuck, and the rest of my family.
It's almost
they-
a bedrock of your
It
future
is.
development.
Grandma
That's
was
crazy.
late. She was a good Christian woman. She'd get her Bible out and she'd read her Bible, and she just had a problem picking the wrong guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. But bless her heart, I loved her dearly, and Grandma was very inspirational to me, and she laid a foundation for me for hope.
Right.
And prosperity, and that's why I've written some of the books I've written. Her stories are in there.
Sure,
I wrote
sure.
a book entitled "Experience the Joy of Debt-Free Living," and I'm telling you, Grandma's the one that showed me how to do that.
Right.
And from the experiences of my life is where these books came from. My Vietnam books came from my experiences in my life. But But the experiences that we have in life are for a reason.
Sure.
Even the good ones and the bad ones, there's a reason, and we'll get something good out of it as long as we pick the good stuff out.
Absolutely.
And then don't follow the bad stuff.
Sure, sure.
You know.
So what? Tell us a little bit. So you're in the church now, and you've got your church, you've got your beautiful space up there, and you come to a point where it's kind of time to walk away, right? Or to step out.
Yeah, the church has been long. We've been there approaching, I think we were 17 and a half years into the church, when all of a sudden one day I looked at the congregation and I thought, it's good, it's full, there's a good crowd here, but they're all the same age that I am.
Yeah.
Where are the young people at?
Right.
And I didn't notice it. I didn't think about it. But now I was at that time. I'm 69 at the time. I mean, it's kind of like I went into the church at 48. Started the church itself at 50 when I was 52. Got ordained at 52. Getting started all over again.
Sure.
And then so 17 and a half years later, I'm now 69, and I looked at the church and I thought, I can't seem to relate to these 25 and 30-year-old, 35-year-old people with kids.
Right.
And so our older crowd was solid. The income was good. We had good attendance. It was really great. But I thought, if I continue this for another 10 or 15 years, we're all going to die off and there won't be anything here.
Yeah.
And so I need to find someone young to do it. And so a good friend of a family of mine that I've known for years, I didn't call them, but I guess the good Lord organized a meeting, walked into a coffee shop, ran into this guy who was my best friend, Tommy Barnett, his son, Luke Barnett, who was at the time about 48 years old. And I thought, that's a good age. But I ran into him, and I just said, hey, I'm thinking about maybe stepping down from the church.
Sure.
I said, my congregation doesn't know it. My board doesn't know it. My wife and I are the only two who have talked about it. Would you happen to know someone that maybe I could help get in there, that I could stay with him for a while and train him and let him take over in a few years? He said, yeah, me.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy.
You? He said, yeah, I've been trying to add on new churches and new campuses. He was still now pastoring the Phoenix campus that we have, which is our large campus, over on Cave Creek Road. Anyways, and he said, yeah, me, I've been trying for years to expand and get more locations, and we'd love to have a Scottsdale location. And he said, and I'll go out there. I said, you're kidding.
That's
and
amazing.
So I said, well, let's work on it. So our board met with their board. We negotiated with it, and 6 months later,
it was done.
It was done.
Yeah, I remember that was a really quick transition.
It was 6 months, and it was done. And they say that transitions like that don't work very well unless the pastor that's there, and that would have been me, leaves. He's got to get out because he'll be a troublemaker. He's going to be a problem.
Right.
And I thought, why is that? Why does the pastor that's there, who's merging with the bigger church, why is he a problem? Why is he a troublemaker? So I read books on it. One called Better Together, which was churches are better off merging together and all that. But that the thing you need to do is the pastor of the church that's taken over, he's got to get out, or keep his mouth shut. And most of them didn't keep their mouth shut, and it caused problems. So, and I just thought to myself, I'm not going to leave here, and I'm not going to be a problem. If anything, I want this thing to prosper even greater than when I was here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what you want. I mean, if you build a business, you don't leave and then hope it fails.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You want it to go better, and so we had an agreement, and so I serve on the board for that campus, and now the Lord's blessed it, and now we've gone from 2 campuses now to 8 campuses.
It's amazing.
And we've got churches all over the place in Southern California now, up in Colorado, in Utah border. We've got in Arizona. We've got 5 campuses in Arizona.
It's still probably the most incredible Christmas show in the Valley.
It is.
It's amazing.
It's the most. Yeah. And that's the church that I went to for 19 years before I became a pastor.
Right.
While I was there 19 years doing that, I was a banker part of that time, and a real estate developer part of that time.
Yep.
And so my kids met their spouses there, got married in that
what a
church.
Journey. Yeah.
It's been a great journey, and so we stayed close to the Barnett family, and so they're dear friends of ours, and my wife and I go every week, sit right up on the front row, and just love it and enjoy it. I don't have to raise the money anymore. I don't have to supervise anybody.
Right.
But now I have a veterans ministry that I help out.
That's fantastic.
I'm doing mentoring for business people in business, trying to help them understand how to run a business and how to set it up properly, and still helping couples and families and and my wife's got a widow's ministry. She was reading one day, and it says we're supposed to take care of the widows and the orphans. And she felt like
she stepped up.
That was spoken to me.
Yeah.
And so now for 2 years, she's been leading the widow's ministry.
Fantastic.
And I'm the counselor for the widow's ministry.
Okay.
Because I don't charge any money, and I don't ask them to invest anything with me.
Yep.
And I just show them. They have a lot of questions.
Sure.
You know, those that are listening into this, there's one thing in the family I find out that's sad, is that many times the man dies and the wife is left and she has no idea where they are financially.
Totally. Yeah.
And I mean, I found women that didn't even realize that the husband owned, valuable property worth $1 million, $2 million paid for.
Right.
That she didn't even know they owned.
Right.
And I've had to get it structured so that she wound up with the property, and then she keeps it or sells it, whatever she wants to do to it.
Absolutely.
But most women don't know if there's even a life insurance policy. I had one where the man died, had a $500,000 life insurance policy that he thought was for his wife, but he forgot one little thing. He didn't name a beneficiary.
Ugh.
I don't know that the insurance agency did something
Sure.
wrong
Yeah,
there, but
doesn't seem
there was no proof of who the beneficiary was.
Sure. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I guess that somehow it's
That doesn't seem right.
Doesn't sound like it would even make any sense. You'd have a policy without that.
Yeah.
And so anyways, we wound up getting that corrected, but that took a while and cost us an attorney to get through that.
Yeah.
But stuff like that happens. That's very sad. And yes, what's interesting, when I was a banker, I had customers with the same problem.
Yep.
Where wives would
So
come
it's
in.
circle back again.
There it is.
The experience
Past
in life.
experiences in life come back.
Right.
And I had one little lady, her husband died. She thought they were broke and that she was going to have to get rid of her house because they couldn't afford it, whatever. We went to her safe deposit box. This was years ago. This was back in the 70s, early 70s. And we opened up one of the safe deposit boxes. I said, "Did you know you have 4 safe deposit boxes? And the big ones, the real big ones." And she said, "We do?"
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah." And so we opened them up and we took an inventory of all of them. This was like in 1972 or 3. He had about $3 million worth of stocks in General Motors and
so he had the real deal, the stock
General Electric,
certificates,
and all the major oil companies and all
Right.
that. He was buying 100 shares of stock for years and years and years, and just taking them and sticking them. But it was just in his name.
Right.
So then we had to go get
the whole process, right?
probate and all that.
Yeah.
But here, a lady that was worth several $1 million back in '72.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Probably $10 million today.
Right.
Didn't know she had any of that.
That's crazy.
So yeah,
So-
past experiences come back.
Yeah, that's amazing. So the next evolution, and you continue to go, which is absolutely mind blowing. But now you're running a podcast, which is I've watched quite a few of your episodes. Really valuable and interesting.
Oh, well, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, it's just another legacy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
continue to lead the legacy. This one's in the spoken word and helping people out. But tell us a little bit of how you got into that.
Well, it's kind of fun. When I stepped away from the church, I wasn't preaching anymore.
Right.
And I had all this stuff inside of me that I felt I needed to get out.
To get out there,
And I
yeah.
wanted to speak it, whatever. And I thought, well, I don't really want to knock on churches' doors and ask to be invited and travel around the country and leave my wife sitting here. That isn't interesting.
Sure.
So I contacted a magazine called Charisma Magazine, which is a Christian magazine. It's been around about 70 years.
Okay.
Very, very well-known magazine in the Christian community. And I asked them if I could do a podcast on their network. And they said, yeah, we'd love to have you. What are you going to talk about? I said, well, life in general.
Sure.
It's called Quality Christian Living is the name of the podcast. And it has to do with why not live a quality life? You're going to live a life anyways.
Right.
Why don't you make it a quality life? And as a Christian, you can rely upon your faith. And so then, and at the time, I'd already been writing books because I couldn't preach, so I started writing.
Right.
And I couldn't, and all that stuff that's inside of you, it had to come out.
Right.
And so I wrote all these books, and that was great. But then I kind of got tired of turning out a book every year.
Sure.
And so now for 2 years, I've been doing podcasts on the Charisma Magazine. It's cpnshows.com. And that podcast is, I do 2 every week. I've just did my 211th podcast.
That's amazing.
In 2 years.
Right.
So
That's
I'm keeping
crazy.
it pretty busy.
Yeah.
I started off doing 3 a week.
Right.
And
Wow.
realized that
Yeah.
that was maybe a little too much.
Sure.
And I settled on 2. And I know most podcasters do 1.
Right.
But I just got to do 2. So I do 2. And currently I'm in a series on business. And I'm going to probably do a nice series, a long series. I don't know how long it'll go, but I have a lot of experience. You asked me earlier, how do you get started writing a book?
Right.
Well, podcast is similar to writing a book.
Sure.
I get a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas. I keep throwing them in a file.
Yep.
I get a little note, a little thought in my mind, and I like my laptop, but I don't love my laptop, and I find it more comfortable just to write a few notes
Sure.
on a piece of paper and throw it into a file, and that's a future, maybe a topic.
You
know,
build up some stuff, yeah.
And then I'll go through that file every once in a while. Oh my goodness, I've got topics here I can write on. I can talk about family. I can talk about getting out of debt. I can talk about veterans. I can talk about
Sure.
living a generous life. I can talk about having faith. I can talk about happy marriages. And, I mean, all those things, and that's where the topics come from. And
Sure.
I do series. And the
Yep.
Quality Christian Living podcast is really designed to help people live a balanced life and a quality life, just like when I preached.
Right.
It's like taking my preaching
sermons,
that I
yeah,
did for
yeah.
all those years, teaching all those different messages, and now doing it through a microphone.
Yep.
And it was a little bit of adjustment because there's nobody out there.
Right, yeah.
But I picture that I'm talking to a church congregation.
Sure.
You
Sure.
know, and many times when you talk like that, you're thinking of specific people that need to hear this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll call them and I'll say, hey, I just did a series of podcasts on, on faith, and
Yeah, I
I
think
know
you would
you're
love
going
to
through some
listen to it,
really
right.
difficult stuff. So, and personally, I've been healed of some amazing
I know,
diseases.
absolutely incredible.
I have been diagnosed with on 3 different occasions life-threatening diseases. 7 years ago, I was told after I retired from the church, 6 months afterwards, and I started writing books and all that stuff. I was told by the doctors, they said, you've got probably 6 months to live.
Oh
You've
my
got
gosh.
multiple myeloma, bone marrow cancer,
Uh-huh.
and it's really advanced bad. And if we can't get some help with this medication, I don't think you have but 6 months to live. Well,
Oh my
that
gosh.
was 7 years ago.
Right. Right.
So here I am 7 years
I
later,
love it.
feeling
Fantastic.
good, doing
Glad
great.
you're here. Yeah.
And then prior to that, 20 years prior to that, I lost my right kidney to cancer. Both of those came from Agent Orange exposure
Yeah.
in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So that
Which
inspired
you wrote
me.
a book about that
So I wrote a
experience,
book
right?
on that. I wrote
Yeah.
a book on Vietnam and
Yeah.
how to deal with PTSD and Agent Orange exposure.
Yeah.
And that's what caused me to start a veterans group. And then
Right.
I have meetings and I speak, and then I give away to all the veterans a book on how to get help.
Sure,
Because there's
sure.
a lot of them are going through a lot of stuff.
It is hard for the veterans too, right? And I just feel like there's so many resources out there, right? But most of the veterans don't know about it. I mean, they don't know where to get the help, where to get the medical, where to get the psychological help. And I mean, there's so many resources out there.
Yeah, there are.
And that's dear to me too. And it's just really, really difficult to bring all that information together and really get help for them. You know?
I remember telling one guy, he came to me and he said, I want to get a veteran's ID card so I can get a discount at Home Depot and Lowe's.
Yeah.
Because you get 10% off your
Yeah,
purchase, right?
Yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
a veteran.
And you can park at Lowe's. They have
And I
veteran
said,
parking.
I go to the Prescott one because we had a home in Prescott for 15 years, and so and there's a Prescott hospital up there, a VA hospital that's really friendly. It's homespun.
Sure.
It's not a great big massive group, but there's
Right.
thousands of people working, and it's easy to get in, easy to get out.
Yeah.
I said, why don't we go for a drive to Prescott, and I'll show you where to get your card.
Sure.
So we went up there. When we were there, while we were there getting his card, I told him, I said, hey Pete, why don't you tell him about your cancer battle you just went through with lymphoma?
Yeah.
And the guy said, lymphoma, cancer, what are you talking about?
Right.
And then Pete was talking to him and said, yeah, I been battling. I'm going to Stanford University, and I've been, radiation and chemotherapy and surgeries and whatever, and they gave him like a 2% chance to live.
Wow.
Yeah, and he just had a very rare disease, but it was Agent Orange exposure and Camp Lejeune.
Right.
Which you
Yeah,
see on
yeah,
TV
see
all
Camp
the time
Lejeune,
now.
yeah, the
and
ads,
he
yeah.
was a Marine, and he was in Camp Lejeune. So the guy said, well, my goodness. He said, let me file a
So
claim,
many
a claim
resources
for you.
available for that. Yeah.
And Pete says, well, I don't really need I don't need the money. I mean, I don't want to help somebody else. And the guy said, doesn't matter how much money you have.
Right.
And so Pete got blessed, and he's been put on 100% disability now and gets 100% disability check for it.
Sure.
And he donates that now to the church.
That's amazing.
And he donates a lot of other money
Right.
that's come in, and then he gave him back money for years
Sure.
that he has suffered with this thing. So there's
And he
guys
had no idea, right?
He had
Yeah.
no idea it was
Yeah.
there. I didn't know about the help from the VA until my doctor over at Mayo Clinic. He said, "You were a Vietnam veteran, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Were you around Agent Orange?" I said, "Yeah, I was in the jungle." They sprayed it on me every day,
Right, yeah.
And he said, "Well, you might want to check with the VA." And I went to the VA, and the VA has picked up my medication. Now get this one: $160,000 a year the VA is spending on my chemo medication. And
Oh my
I'm still
gosh.
taking a pill.
Right.
And that pill I take is $500 each.
Wow.
It's over $12,000
Yeah.
a month now. I don't take it for a full
Jeez.
month. I take it
Right.
shy of a month. But and think of that one. That'll
yeah.
bust a 401k or a retirement
Oh
plan.
yeah, in a heartbeat,
In
right?
a heart, yeah, that's right. And
Yep.
so it's been 7 years of about $160,000 a year
Yeah.
you're paying. I'm probably going to get off of it pretty soon, but the doctors feel that it's now called maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
But the VA has picked that up and has
Yeah.
taken full responsibility for it and says we caused that, and so we'll take care of that.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because you hear so many horror stories about the VA, right?
Yes, you do.
But I've had nothing but good experiences, and I don't know if you know this, but there's actually a VA clinic right next to Oncala.
Oh,
You
I know.
And yeah, and
Yeah.
it's they're here, and if you're a veteran, just reach out. I mean, call me, call Pastor Fred.
That's right.
We'll help you find a place.
We'll help you find it. Yeah,
Absolutely, it's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
there's one
crazy.
by Oncala. There's one out at Anthem.
Yep.
And I think there's one in the Southeast Valley, and they just built a beautiful new clinic on 32nd Street north of Van Buren in Phoenix.
Oh, did they really? I didn't know that
it's,
one. Yeah.
It's huge.
Right.
It's gorgeous, and just to take care of the demand.
Sure,
They
sure.
can't quite handle it at the hospital they have.
Well, the hospital is busy.
It's
I'll
busy.
give them that. Yeah, all the time. It's
I've
busy.
tried to go down there, and it's so hard to get in. So
It is, yeah.
I told my wife I need to go to the VA and get my annual physical. You have to have an annual checkup with
Yep.
them to qualify to get your medication.
Right.
So I go once a year, and I go to Prescott.
Yep.
And
yeah.
so, and it's nice.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
spend the night,
Make a
just
day
kind
trip
of
out of it
make
kind
it
of
a
thing.
fun thing.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
and but it's available to them. So
Yep.
yeah, life's had a lot of ups and
amazing.
downs, and
Amazing.
and I think of what the Lord's put us all through, but it's for a reason. The Bible tells us that everything works for the good of for people if they love the Lord. Those that are called to the Lord, will be blessed if they just do things that are pleasing to the Lord. That just simply means follow the Word of God, seek Him. Live a godly life. Don't cheat on your wife. Don't cheat on your husband. Control the things that we do in our life. If we do that and live a good life and receive Christ as our Lord and Savior, then we're promised a wonderful life. Not a perfect life.
Sure.
Look at me. 3 battles
Yeah.
with cancer.
Yeah.
And all the stuff I've gone through, and yet gone through.
Right.
Not around, and it's just a life that's filled with opportunities, and I just hope that everybody listening in will receive those opportunities. Think about when in the past where you've been blessed. And I guess one last thing I'd like to say is, if you're looking for advice and direction in how to live life and how to make decisions in finance or business or marriage, whatever,
Sure.
I always tell people take a piece of paper and write good on one side and write bad on the other, and draw a line down the middle, okay? And write, these are all the bad things that I've done in my life wrong, mistakes. These are the good things that I've done in my life. Take the bad ones, tear that part off, throw it in the trash, and don't do those again.
Sure. Sure.
And just focus on the good things. And people say, well, that's kind of corny advice. No, it's very valuable
Yeah,
advice. If
absolutely.
we don't repeat the mistakes that we've made, then we're bound to live a better life.
Absolutely. I love it.
And that's what we need to do.
Totally.
That's what we need to do in life. So.
It's amazing talking to you. Thank you so much. Let's kind of pull it all together. So people can find you. Is it davidfriend.com or
Yeah,
Pastor
it's
David
davidcfriendauthor.com.
Gotcha.
You just go to
Okay.
davidcfriendauthor.com. That'll take you to my webpage.
Yep.
And on the front of my webpage, there'll be a link right in the middle. It says a podcast link.
Right. Yep.
You can
Saw
click
that.
that, and it'll take you to the 200. I did my 211th last week.
Yep.
You'll have an opportunity to look at 211 30-minute
Sure.
teachings,
Sure.
podcasts, and then on that same webpage, if you just scroll up,
Yep.
then my books are
Yeah,
listed
all the
on
books
there.
are on there, and
They're
then all
on
about
there.
you too,
And
which is
yeah.
an interesting story. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
there's a fun story about Vietnam before, during, and after. Before I went to Vietnam, what it was like. While I was there, what life was like, and then when I came back.
Sure.
For those of you who lived, or at least remember someone who lived through that time, it was
Yeah.
pretty crazy back in the 60s. And
Oh, yeah.
I went to
Yeah.
Vietnam from 66 to 68.
Right.
And I mean, I'm over there, and people are saying the Vietnamese are being killed and slaughtered by all of our American guys, and we're killing babies and killing women and all this crazy stuff. And in reality, that was so insane.
Sure.
I mean, I was there the whole year. I know that they tried to kill me a number of times. I
Yeah,
got caught in the middle of firefights, and I had a few things launched at me that, thank
Sure.
the good Lord, they didn't hit me. But then while that's going on and I'm safe, I'm getting sprayed by Agent Orange.
Yeah.
And 50 years later, it comes out in my body.
I know. That's crazy.
That's crazy. And
It is.
PTSD, I came home with that.
Right. Sure.
So, yeah, so there's information on that webpage references to the Vietnam experience too. That's on there also.
Sure. So thank you. And this is Pastor David Friend, and it's davidcfriendauthor.com. Get all the information. Fantastic person. So I just can't thank you enough for being here, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bless you, man.